So next up, we have Dr. Gerard O'Leary, co-founder and CEO of NerveX. He has earned his PhD in bioelectronics at the University of Toronto, and at NerveX, he is building the device infrastructure layer for AI in clinical care. Gerard, over to you.
But yeah, thank you, Mobeen, for the introduction. So at NerveX, we're building the connective hardware layer for AI in clinical care. So my background is in electrical and computer engineering, and I co-founded the company with my PhD supervisor, Dr. Tafik Valiante. So originally, we were developing implantable devices for epilepsy in the human space, and we were approached by a veterinarian towards the end of my degree who made us aware that epilepsy was also common in canines. So we thought, okay, this is the perfect opportunity for us to take our existing device, deploy it in the real world to solve problems in veterinary healthcare. And long story short, we then brought on our chief veterinary officer, Dr. Mark DeWolde, who made us aware of just so many other problems that exist in the veterinary healthcare space beyond the initial implant that we were developing, where it had a relatively narrow market size, and the appetite for spending about $10,000 on an implant for pet owners ended up being too small to really build a scalable company. So we, of course, as all startups do, we pivoted, we stepped back and looked at what challenges we could solve in the market with our technology. And over the past few years, that led to the creation of our NxVET brand, which is dedicated to the veterinary healthcare space. So we are still exploring applications in the human space as well. It's important to bear in mind. But for the presentation here, I'll be focusing on our traction in the vet space. And so as part of the initiative we're building, we've assembled a world-leading team of veterinary advisors. So the biggest group of veterinary clinics in the world is called VCA. Anyone with a pet might have taken them to a VCA clinic. Their chief medical officer is on our advisory board, the president of Vets Without Borders, and various specialists in cardiology, neurology, and other specialties as well. And so in kind of iterating with all of these advisory board members and really understanding the veterinary space, we saw that there's key problems that present low-hanging fruit for us to solve, and the biggest of which is burnout. So about 50% of veterinarians are facing burnout, and 30% of their time is spent on medical record keeping. On top of that, when it comes to the actual examinations that take place in clinics, about 85% of these patients exhibit fear, and veterinary healthcare has the highest rate of non-fatal occupational injuries in North America, so lots of occupational hazards. And so to solve this, there has been an emergence of these AI-based co-pilots, both in veterinary healthcare and in human healthcare, where basically AI software can record your conversations and use the transcripts to generate medical records. But the problem is software has a fundamental limitation when it comes to being used and deployed in clinics. So firstly, a lot of these software tools use personal phones, so staff members are required to install an app. They have to remember to press start and stop on recordings and ask for consent from each patient. It's a very cumbersome process, and a lot of times people forget to use the tools, which means that they're not getting the benefits they would otherwise see from AI. But most importantly, these software tools are missing physiological awareness about the patient. So it's just recording the conversations. Very few are integrating any actual medical data that's recorded from the patient themselves. And so this is the overall concept we're trying to solve both in veterinary healthcare and in human healthcare. And our solution is this NxVET platform. And so the idea is that there's a range of hardware devices that exist in the clinic to collect data that's otherwise lost and to automate the use of AI in clinics. So the first device I'm going to show you here is called NxHub. And so this is really the core connective tissue in the clinic. So it can operate in two ways. Either you press the button to start and stop your recordings during your examination, just for consent reasons, it's important to do that. Or if you get consent in advance, you can have an always on operating mode. So this device is kind of like your Alexa for your exam room, where it's continuously analyzing the activity that takes place in the room and automatically segments the conversation. So you don't need to press start and stop on apps. There's no training required for staff. And that's the biggest pain point that we're seeing in AI adoption in clinics. It's how do you train your staff and how do you get them to use it continuously? So compliance is a big factor. And of course, with this solution, because it's a dedicated hardware device, it's part of the infrastructure. We're not requiring staff members to use personal devices, which can, of course, cause security hazards. And it looks unprofessional if you go to your doctor and they have their smartphone sitting on the table recording, which is the current state of affairs. And also, NxHub serves as a base station in the exam room or anywhere in the clinic for various other Bluetooth devices that can collect data about the patient. And so at one point, we did actually develop our own software tool for AI scribing. So we understand the pain points in this space. But rather than competing in this exploding market, we've decided to instead partner with all of the major scribe companies in the veterinary space. And we're working on expanding into the human space as well. And as part of this, we're now HIPAA compliant and SOC 2 compliant as well. So we've proven our ability to integrate and our security capabilities. Now, beyond NxHub, the main kind of flagship device for our company is called NxScope. So this connects to NxHub in the exam room, and it allows staff members to collect the physiological data that I mentioned without those occupational hazards. So this is itself a digital stethoscope. It's also a non-contact temperature sensor, whereas for context in veterinary healthcare, they typically have to use rectal thermometers for patients. So of course, that can be a big source of occupational hazards. NxScope allows you to collect all of that data non-invasively, but it also has an integrated microphone so that as you walk around the clinic, it can continue to record your conversations without using your personal device. So it's a dedicated medical device for your AI scribe. So for our current business model, we're selling NxHub as a once-off cost of $99 upfront for the hardware, plus $49 per room per month. And this scales depending on the number of units you want for your clinic. And then for NxScope, we are charging $399 USD plus a $49 per month subscription. The free tier gives you basic physiological measurements like temperature, pulse, and rest rate, but $49 per month gives you report generation, so you can share insights with your client in the middle of the conversation, and it does what's called phonocardiography analysis, so it looks for things like murmurs and arrhythmias. So we started shipping devices, NxScope devices about 7 months ago. We're in about 50 clinics now. The response has been great, but what we noticed was that we had limitations with connectivity that NxHub now solves. So for the past 6 months or so, we've been laser focused on getting NxHub into clinics and to serve as the base station for NxScope rather than having to use applications on smartphones. And we're getting a lot of interest from enterprise customers who see this same pain point of having to ask staff to use their cell phones and having to train, large groups of clinics on using these AI tools. And so with our current business model, the serviceable addressable market is $99 million for NxVET and NxHub sales. For NxScope sales, plus 147 million ARR, assuming we penetrate the 35,000 clinics in North America. This is before global expansion. And with NxHub, we're looking at 13.86 million in upfront sales, plus 84 million ARR from the recurring subscription that takes place afterwards. So as I mentioned, we've already launched our hardware. We're shipping to clinics now. We're about to put in a production batch order for 1,000 units for NxHub. We see this as our wedge to get into clinics. And from there, we can upsell our peripheral devices such as NxScope and others that I can share more about as well. We've been very active in the US in particular, attending all of the major trade shows and conferences, and the response has been fantastic so far. And yeah, so now we're looking to really just scale NxHub, use that as the wedge to get NxScope into clinics and go from there. So as part of this, now that we know exactly what we're focusing on and scaling NxHub, we're looking to raise 2 million USD, mainly for hiring for enterprise sales reps with the corporate groups that we're in discussions with, handling upfront manufacturing costs for NxHub and NxScope, sales and marketing, and general operations. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. Maybe let's kick it off with one question here. AI in the clinical documentation and workflow space is crowded, but what makes NerveX defensible, and why is hardware infrastructure important versus software-only approaches?
Great question. Yes, for sure. I think the use of AI copilots for programming in particular has meant that SaaS companies around AI scribing have really taken off. It's a very crowded space, and the key limitations really are the use of personal devices and the fact that you have to interact with the software to use it to its full capabilities. And we know that in clinical environments where staff are burning out, they'll forget to use these applications. It needs to weave into their workflow, and the only way to do that is with dedicated devices in the clinic. And what sets us apart too is that we've had, even though we're in the veterinary healthcare space, we've been focusing on compliance and security. So we just achieved HIPAA compliance and SOC 2 compliance as well. So we're set up for expansion into the human space.